All right. What the hell? Might as well start early. All right. There goes Ellie. Hello, Ellie. 1 second. I started the show a couple of minutes early because I was raring to go. All right, guys. What the hell? It's, I'm sorry. I get to start the show a little bit early. It's one of the perks of being a podcaster. I didn't want to sit here any longer. I set the damn thing up. I'm like, all right, now what? Let's just do it, right? So, you never know. You never know. Unless there's a technical problem and I can, you know what I'm saying, guys. All right, so thank you. This is Tarabuster. We meet here every Tuesday and Thursday on the Political Voices Network, and then we have our Friday get-together, the Friday Hangout on the Tarabuster YouTube page, youtube.com/c4channel/Tarabuster, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Come on over. We have a very nice Friday night gathering of awesome patriots. Sometimes we get maggots, but we don't suffer them too long. As long as they can behave themselves, they're allowed to stay. I have no problem with that, but they usually prove me right within about 10 seconds of showing up. So we have Jim and Susie and Mark and Matt and our moderators keeping us safe. Okay, listen. Let me just, I hope the technical side is working. Let me bring Ellie in here so we can figure that out. Are you there, Ellie? Can you hear me?
I am here.
Okay, good.
It looks
All
like I'm
right.
on a delay.
We're on a delay? No. I mean, if you're
I
listening
can
to
see my body moving.
Yeah, you should listen to the feed, not the, you should have your own feed. And not the show. Don't watch the show. Watch the feed.
Yeah, I'm looking at the guest eCam
Oh, okay.
live.
Yeah, that's what you should look at. Don't look at the show because the show is
Yeah.
about 10 seconds behind.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I'm a little funky. Yeah, I'm a little delayed.
You really are you? No,
Yeah.
huh. You seem okay to me. So I
Okay.
wonder. Yeah. If that's gonna, it'll be fine. Maybe it'll catch up. Sometimes when you start a stream, you know what I mean. It needs a minute to like click in or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like a half a second
delayed. You are delayed. What the fuck is that about? Huh?
Maybe I'm just delayed by nature.
Yeah, that's odd. Your video is delayed. I can hear you, and then your mouth starts moving. That's odd.
People say that a lot.
I hear you. I know what you're gonna say. Wow.
I feel like I'm not very delayed. I feel like it's catching up a little
It might
bit.
catch up. I think it has to be you somehow.
It's warming up.
Right.
Has to be me.
It does.
I'm the problem. It's me.
Right. It has to because I don't have any control over that.
I don't know. Who knows? My power cord was crackling, and I was kind of scared before I started because I was like, "Is this going to explode? Like, is my technology just about to like catch on fire while I'm on?"
Oh, now see
online?
now you're synced.
Am I
It
good?
seems a little bit better.
Okay.
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 All right. Well,
We'll do our
don't
best.
look at yourself. Don't just. I won't look at you either, because it is a little distracting. But everybody,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. A lot of people are
Whatevs.
listening.
Whatevs.
This is the nature of what we do,
This is
right?
the
I mean, it
nature.
really is. We do it anyway, and that's what I always say too about like with the podcast in general. People would say, I want to do my own podcast. I'm like, just do it because you do it anyway. It doesn't have to be perfect. You do it anyway, and people understand. They understand that what they're dealing with. This isn't, NBC studios, and so
We are
but
better, Tara.
we are
Don't kid
better.
yourself. We are
No,
better.
well, you are better. Okay, that's what I mean. You're like
Tara.
you're better. You're making me
No.
better For real.
I don't accept. I don't
It's
accept.
true. It's very true. But because you are showing them how it's done, really. You're independent researcher, writer, a sleuth, super sleuth, right? And you're, let me see, I had a whole bio I wrote
My
it.
my my mentor is Nate the Great. If you ever read those books when you were a kid.
Nate the
You
Great.
ever read Nate the
No, I
Great?
might be a little
Oh,
older than that. Nate the Great. Who's Nate the
usually he's well, you know what? I think the books were probably a lot older than me growing up, but he was
Nate the
this kid
Great?
who would go find missing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that the dogs always ate, and things like that.
Nate the Great. I'm looking it up. Yeah. I was born in '67, in the
Yeah,
summer
they
of.
would. I
Yeah.
feel like they were written in the 70s. I don't feel like they were written when I
Yeah.
was reading them.
Long running early reader mystery book series about a boy detective who solves neighborhood cases with his dog, Sludge. Very
Hmm.
cute. So,
Sledge.
aw.
Lots of
How come,
cats and dogs.
yeah, they never made a cartoon out of it. That's odd,
No. You know
right?
what? Because things used to be better. We didn't always need a TV show.
It's so
I
true. You could read a book, right?
would just be happy with it.
Right. I'll wait for the movie, right?
All right, right, sure, sure. I'm sure it's coming.
Right. So, Ellie, let's see, you are one of the most relentless investigators of the Epstein files and bringing, I guess, you're a mom of four, which I would
Yeah,
imagine brings a lot of moral, uh, not clarity,
yeah,
but imperative to the work you
yeah,
do, really, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Because you
could
just it's a drive.
tell me what tell because while the corporate media is follows the distraction, of course, the war of mass distraction we have. Of course, they're going to follow that.
Right.
This is the Epstein files are still there, and they still haven't
Hmm.
complied with subpoenas. And
No.
we're still missing millions of documents, but there are millions of documents already released, which are a shit show. But can you just give us a background on what you've been dealing with?
Um, you know, prior to this last release, I was very diligent about like going through and reading every page, one at a time, and some are just more of scanning because they're, weird photocopies of books and things that don't matter as much. And then you get through like their email correspondence, which is what I look
Mm,
at because I think it's more interesting. I don't think anybody expected anyone to read those emails, and so I was sort of digging and putting conversations together because the files are, of course, all out of order. They make no sense. They didn't
wow.
make any effort to put things in there chronologically, so you sort of have to like put a little pile over here, put a little pile over here until you start to see these conversations add up. So that's what I was doing prior to January 30th, and then when January 30th happened and they gave us 3.5 million files. I was actually in the city interviewing with somebody else, and we were both kind of panicking because we'd read the news, and
Mm,
I was just like, you know what? I have to be at peace with it. Everybody's going to go start digging and finding those hot button items that they want to, make some clickbait out of and we'll pay attention to for a few days, and I'm going to take my time. But I also had to recognize that logically, I can't look at every page of 3.5 million files,
yeah.
which are not necessarily 3.5 million pages. They could be much longer than that. A file could be any number of pages. And so I started to hone in on looking for details of specific things. And so we have the DOJ search page. They have like an Epstein library
Yeah.
search page that's really clunky and very tricky and very hard to search. But the thing is if you start looking through these documents and you discover that someone important has a pseudonym, um, you can start to look by that pseudonym. Like one thing is somebody was sending Jeffrey Epstein emails where they were putting three F's in his first name. And so I can go back in there and I can search by Jeffrey with three F's, and I will find a whole horde of emails that may not have shown up if I was just putting in his email address. I found pseudonyms for Prince Andrew, which made it easier to find his whole conversation thread. And then we started to have individual cases from survivors that we were piecing together and paying attention to. And the main one, most recently, was the case of the Hilton Head woman, Hilton Head, South Carolina, where we had one so they're called 302s, and a 302 is just kind of a code word for an FBI
Mm-hmm.
interview. Like the FBI took her seriously, they sat her down, they interviewed her, and there was one of those in the files, but then some reporters at NPR discovered that there were four or three or four other missing interviews, and there was like 53 pages of missing
Mm.
documents. And wouldn't you know, they had to do with Donald Trump,
Uh-huh.
because this woman, as a child, had accused, well, she hadn't accused him as a child. As a child, she had, sort of hidden away, but later in life, a friend had encouraged her to come forward, who she had told her story to as a child, and said,
God.
I think this is the case you're talking about. And she came forward. And so she was interviewed by the FBI 4 times, which is incredibly relevant. I mean, not everybody gets to have 4 interviews with the FBI. That matters. And then she was also represented by Lisa Bloom, who's Gloria Allred's daughter.
Yes.
And so I really started pouring into this case because I found it very interesting. It wouldn't be something that your maybe average Epstein files, you know, doom scroller might pay attention to necessarily, because it takes a lot of research to figure out what's true in her statement, because everything's from 1983 through
Uh,
1985. So that's the tough spot. Like, we don't have the internet in 1983. And she's talking about concert dates, and she's talking about arrest records, and she's talking about addresses and housing deeds and stuff like that. So
mm-hmm.
it was a lot of like searching through archives and like paying for archival subscriptions to things, and like I got a membership to classmates.com so I could like search through yearbooks, and
Right. Wow.
doing all these things so that I could verify the things that she's saying, and potentially prove that she's telling the truth, because my inkling is that she is, if she met with the FBI four
Right.
times.
Right.
My inkling is that her story was quite credible if a legal team jumped in to represent her. But also, just from her conversations with them, she is so hesitant to talk to them. And she keeps asking them why it matters this far out. Like, she's like, this isn't going to change anything. This was 40 years ago. I don't know why you guys are pushing me. Like, it's a lot of
Hmm.
that, which is like, she's not super forthcoming. She doesn't love that she's talking to the FBI, which also makes me think, like, okay, a person who came in with an incredible story would be more likely to want to divulge more, and
Yes.
she really doesn't. And so the things that she says, they're very innocent. Like she didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was. She'd never watched, she's not a big news watcher. And in 2019, it was her friend who came forward and was like, I need you to tell me the story about the guy again in South Carolina, because this guy's all over the news, and I just have a hunch. And she said, well, he looks like, she's like, all I can remember is he looked like Lurch from the Addams Family. Like, she's just like, I just remember his face was really long, he had dark hair, and he looked
Uh-huh.
like Lurch, which, hits. And so her friend was like, I need you to look at this case, because she hadn't seen it. She wasn't watching the news when he was arrested. And when the case came forward, the only real picture we had of Epstein was like him and Donald Trump. We had like a picture of them standing
Right.
together. That was big news. And when she came to the FBI, she brought the picture, but she said, look, I need you to like crop him out. Like, I just need this. If we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, I need to just talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Can you just crop Donald Trump out? I don't want to talk about that. And her friend came back. I don't know if her friend was interviewed by the FBI or they were interviewed together or she encouraged her, but she's like, you need to talk about that. Like, because the
Yeah.
FBI asked her, like, is there a reason you're asking us to crop him out? And she's like, no, there's no
Huh.
reason. And then
It's the
there were a
trauma.
lot of, right, there were a lot of breaks in the conversation where she's like, I can't, I'm done for today. I'm not talking about this. And that was a piece of that. And then eventually she had some time and thought to kind of come back and say more about that. But
So let
the
me just
things that
ask
she
a
said,
question
yeah, go
first.
ahead.
Sorry. When this woman gave her testimony or was talking to the FBI,
Hmm.
was Trump the president, or when? Like, what's the
Yes,
timeline here?
yes,
So
yes.
it
It
was the
was,
first maladministration that this.
yes, it was
Okay.
2019. So it was right when Epstein had been arrested.
Okay.
And she gave a couple interviews before he died, and then she gave a couple interviews after he died. Um, but yeah, like there was definite fear of
Yeah,
saying something about the president of the United States. That's not something she wanted to
of
do. And she was
course.
also she was very forthcoming because like her background is what you might expect of someone who had severe sexual trauma. Like she had had issues with drugs and alcohol. She had
Wow.
had a criminal record, but also those were the girls that Epstein targeted were girls who
Yes.
maybe came from those situations. So it's not like weird that that was her story, but I think she was ashamed of it and but she also told the FBI like, look, I need you to know this about me so that
Mm,
you don't find all this stuff about me later and think that I'm not believable. She's like, here's my criminal
right.
record, here's the story of the things I've done. I'm not,
Hmm.
I'm obviously not proud of any of this stuff, but I just need you to know it up front. So she did a really good job. And then she really, really, she's maintained that she wants to be anonymous. And so I think that's important that we allow that for her, despite all the information. I mean, she's given us such specific details, and you can look things up. I mean, the internet exists, but like she deserves that
Mm-hmm.
anonymity. But now, I've gone through and I've picked apart all the things that she said happened, and you can look at concert tours, you can look at like
Right.
housing deeds, all these things exist, and so you can find them and go like, oh, she was telling the truth here, 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 and here. Now we have to go in and figure out if Epstein was actually on the island that early, because he was later in life. He flew there all the time. And there was an event that I discovered that was held there beginning in 1981 called the Renaissance Weekend, which you may have heard of. It's a very huge deal now. They have it on the West Coast, but like
The
they invite
Renaissance Fair, right? Is that it
I
or
don't know, it's
no?
not a Renaissance fair.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like a big event where they bring in journalists, like late night TV
Oh, okay.
hosts, like big names, big names. But it started out in 1981 with 60 families. It's always been very private. The guest list has been secretive, and it's run by a family that there are connections between them and Epstein.
Wow.
And so it's likely something he would have attended. It had Jamie Dimon and like financiers and like all these people, Clintons. Um, and so it's likely
Wow.
that that's something he would have gone to, but there's not like a guest list, floating around or agendas. And so we're really trying to track down these bits and pieces of information to just validate her whole story, because then you can validate like the actual criminality of the entire thing.
Wasn't there another or a mainstream publication that went back and started doing the shoe leather work, validating this woman's claims? That's what I heard.
I
That
don't
maybe it
know.
was
I know there's a newspaper called the Post and Courier that's out of South
okay.
Carolina that has done a really good job researching all this. All the information that I've gathered has been, I mean,
Yeah,
they
you
don't
would have found out about
right.
this. Yeah.
They don't give the information obviously in their articles because they're keeping her anonymous too, but they gave really good details about the
Right.
things that she said. And then all the archive stuff was from a newspaper called the Island Packet, which was this little tiny, 1980s newspaper. But it's really helpful because like back then they had social pages, and so they
Mm,
would tell people like move to town and who their families were and where they were going to work, and like
right.
let's welcome this person to town. And like those things are really helpful because you start to get a timeline
Right.
of people were there and who they worked with, and then you can go, well, this person has died, but I see they worked with this person. Maybe this
Mm,
person is someone I could contact, quietly and say, do you remember working with this person? Do you know if there are still rental records on the island from that long ago? Are there boxes? Are there archives? It's a lot of work. I've contacted the library a few times down there. They've been very helpful, but they also only have so much. You look for old yellow pages and white pages, and it's
right.
definitely a lesson in research for sure.
Wow. But I mean, if you have to be careful too, because I'm sure
Yeah.
you're on the radar of all of
Yeah.
these horrible people now. Because I mean, when you
No,
said
well,
that about the Renaissance, I didn't. That's why I said Renaissance.
yeah.
I never heard of that. So
Yeah.
yet another meeting of all these secretive elites
Hmm.
who run the
Right.
world, but have no
Right.
business running the world because they're
But there's
effing
also, I
disgusting.
mean, there's good people who attend it who have like
Hmm.
nothing to do with nothing, like they've
Right.
invited Stephen Colbert before. It's just like it's an event now. But at the beginning, it was very quiet and it was very prominent people with wealth.
Wow.
And then it sort of expanded to this, huge event that it is now.
Yeah, because that's why I would imagine Jeffrey Epstein got away with this for so long, though,
Mm.
because there's different rules for these people.
Yeah.
They're in a whole
Yeah.
class by themselves, the
Hmm.
Epstein class. And and that's one of the things that I've been taking away. And I'm sure you're, as someone you're living in this world, you're really getting a window into it.
Hmm.
I don't know I'm sure there are many disturbing things you've read that keep you up at
Yeah.
night, and it's just how deep does this rabbit hole go? Because they're protecting each other. There's no
Hmm.
accountability for what
Right.
we,
Well,
yeah. So I mean, what are your
I
I
was
mean, I
just going to
just think
say,
about, like, with Trump,
right.
with what he did to this girl, this 13, she was
Yeah.
13 years old when
Hmm.
she was assaulted by this
Right.
monster. And,
And there's he has a if you look at all the cases against him that specifically name him,
yeah.
that again they need to be sussed out, they need to be investigated, but they're always 13-year-olds, and I don't and none of
Wow.
them know each other. None of them would have sat down together and said we're going to tell this story together and we're all going to be 13 years old. Like these are separate witness testimonies and they're always 13-year-olds. Like that seemed to be a thing. And then the descriptions of the things that they say are all very similar. His means of abusing kids is always very similar. And again, they did not know each other. They were not describing things. They would not have read each other's, court records. And that's
Right.
that's important to take note of. We still have to prove that things happen, but that's quite important to note that these women are all saying roughly the same thing. But when you talk about power, what I always point to is the Me Too movement
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
like what level of power was really powerful. You think of someone like Harvey Weinstein, he was taken down by the Me Too movement, right? He was not
Mm-hmm.
wealthy and powerful enough. But you think of someone like uh, Jeffrey Epstein, who you would
Yeah.
think who absolutely had the reputation. Everyone knew what he was doing. Everyone knew about him. Never touched by the Me Too
Right.
movement, not
But I
once. But
wonder
I
if
got it.
do you what are your feelings about him being a blackmailer? Does he have compromise?
Oh,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I mean, I was actually talking to, there's a guy named Marlon Weems who has a Substack called The Journeyman. And I have spoken with him a couple of times, and he used to work on Wall Street. That was his job. And he said, he goes, I don't know if this was Epstein, but we were always told to be careful because there was a guy who kept a little black book that had information on
Uh-huh.
everybody to hold over them. And he goes, I'm pretty sure that's who they were talking about, but I can't guarantee it. But it was a thing. It was a thing that he did have a little black book. He did use these girls as currency to
Mm.
bring people into his circle. And then kind of stair step the ladder of power, like global power,
Right.
as a result. So like the ultimate goal for him was not these girls. These girls were a means to an end, and the end for him was basically being all powerful in every industry, politics, everything.
Yeah.
And I shudder to think if he had stuck around what he would be doing,
Oh
in
God.
the White House at this point. You know what I mean? Like he would, even if we weren't seeing his name every day, he would have an effect on what was happening.
Oh yeah, he'd probably be secretary of something,
Yeah.
yeah, right? For real.
Okay. Right.
Didn't he had Thanksgiving dinner with the with Trader Trump?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he did or not. I know he was
Okay.
there when the Thanksgiving dinner was happening. They were always really, when they would describe things, they were always really kind of off the cuff. And so I don't always know. Like there was humor, like dry humor there, and I don't always know sometimes when they were saying something literally. I do know that he knew when Trump was coming and going, to Palm Beach because
Hmm.
his pilot would always tell him when Trump was coming and going. And I don't know if that's just because like it became like a security thing, like they wouldn't be able to use the airport because Trump was coming and going that day because he was president, or like what level of knowledge
Right.
they had. But he was seeping back in. He was definitely seeping back in. He was super against Trump. He was very Democratic. He thought Trump, he called him the useful idiot all the
Yeah.
time, like ridiculous. But you could see him starting to seep back into that realm and starting to feel out how that benefited him despite the
Mm-hmm.
politics,
Yes.
and that's kind of what we see with um all these other like CEOs and stuff, where we're
Mm.
going like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you standing there on inauguration day? Like, you guys are all Democrats. It's because it doesn't matter about politics, it matters about like what benefits
Yeah.
them
That's all
financially.
that
And so
matters. Yeah,
yeah, and
exactly.
so he was kind of like sneaking back into that and trying to figure that out.
And what was his relationship to Russia, Jeffrey Epstein? Because
Oh,
it's all over
yeah.
the Epstein files,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
mhm.
and it is, and it is with him. It is with Trump. Like, he knows that last tiff that they had over the, real estate that Trump bought out from under him in Palm Beach was a Russian deal. Like, and then he has emails about meeting with Putin's people and inviting Putin to things, and
Incredible.
like he was very any major player he was involved with. He was involved with the Saudis, he was involved with the Russians, he was involved with the Chinese.
It's
He was like
crazy.
telling, I think it was China. I don't think it was Japan. He was telling their like VP of global finance how to take out a loan from the US. Like, he's like, here's what you need to say. Like,
Like they're all
like
coming to
why?
him, right?
Why? Yeah, right.
Right,
So he
that's what
was just,
strikes
yeah.
me. They're all coming to him not just for financial advice. I mean, he's a con man too. He was in a, well, he made money in this grift, right? A
Yeah.
Ponzi scheme
Yeah.
where someone else went to jail. Of course, he didn't go to jail, probably because he
Nope.
had compromise. I mean, he was one of
Yeah.
the two primary instigators of this Ponzi scheme, or the beneficiaries, and
Hmm.
nothing touched him. It's like Trump,
Right.
So
Right.
that's what,
Yeah.
yeah.
He and he was a big reader. That's everybody said. He read all the time. That was something this girl said in South Carolina, is she remembers his house had a massive amount of bookshelves filled with books. That's
Mm.
very, that hit. Um, he read, I feel like when he knew he was meeting with someone, or going to have a conversation with someone, he would read just enough to have a conversation with them.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he couldn't go in depth for hours upon hours, but he could answer their questions enough that he sounded like he knew what he was
Right.
talking about. He had somebody who was like a physicist, like a some microphysicist, something, was emailing him asking him question about like matter and
Oh
things, and he was
no!
like
Wow.
answering it, and like she was asking him, she's like, what do you think about this, and I'm just like, why are you asking him?
Incredible.
he is not he's not a physicist, he's a college dropout. Like, he was
Yeah.
into math, but like, and maybe he's smart, but like, he's not a physicist, and you are a
Yeah.
physicist, and why are you asking him questions? And it's just, it's so, yeah, it's very odd. It's a very odd thing. He was definitely a con man. Like a,
Yeah, and that's what con men do. That's why I call
yeah,
this the new gilded age of greed, gaslighting, and grifters, because we're just surrounded by people who are grifters. They're not
yeah,
experts in their fields like Elon Musk. He's not a genius either. He
no,
knows a
no.
little bit about something, but not much. He's not
Right.
more,
I
you
thought
know,
I thought he had a big college degree, and then I went
no.
back and looked at his education. I was like, oh no, he doesn't at all. Okay, all
Yeah.
right, we're
And
just
he's
doing this
not
again. Okay.
he's not a genius.
No,
I mean, he knows he just inherited a lot of money.
he's just
Uh,
wealthy. He's
yes.
wealthy.
And he's a
Yeah.
con man, and then he goes out and he says, "Let's go to Mars," and everybody's like, "Oh, he's a fucking genius," and they start giving him
Yeah.
taxpayer money. So
Yep.
this is what I'm talking about, like with Jeffrey Epstein too. Because it's such a mystery now. On the corporate media, I hear them talking about it now too. They're catching
Hmm.
up. How did he make his money? Why was he so important? Why would Lex Wexner give him all his money to manage? It doesn't make any sense. He's
Hmm.
a college
Right.
dropout. He's a fraud. He was teaching at this school, but his resume was a complete lie.
Right.
So,
No, he didn't have any, yeah, no credentials. Well, and Leslie Wexner is interesting too, because that's something that you keep seeing circling back and circling back and circling back, is Ohio. Like, Ohio is very wrapped up in this case, and you see it again in South Carolina. Like, one of the main benefactors who owned this thing called Sea Pines Plantation, which is where all
mm,
these wealthy men stayed, was from Ohio, and she describes him in her testimony as being one of Epstein's friends and one of the abusers, and he ran a small for-profit college out of Cincinnati, and it's like there's this major Ohio education system financial benefactor, like lump
Mm,
involvement right in the middle of all of this, and that is headed up by Leslie Wexner. And he's a major player. I know he looks like a cute little guy in a leather vest, but like he's not. He's like a major player. He knew everything that was going on. He knew all of Epstein's finances. He knew why he was wealthy. He knew who he was connected to, and nothing was a surprise. Like Epstein did not steal Leslie Wexner's money as he
right.
claims. Like there's no possible way that that happened. But people warned Leslie Wexner. He had a financial, money manager who was just like, this guy's a criminal. This guy's a con man. You shouldn't work with him. And then that guy ended up getting fired
Ugh.
and became Epstein.
Wow. And then Epstein was using his connection to Wexner to groom and find more young women because he was saying he was like scouting for
Right.
Victoria's Secret, right?
Right. Right. Well, that and then like Wexner was the huge connection to like Robert Maxwell and the
Oh
overseas, like some of the
God.
intelligence stuff. Like he was very connected to the Israeli intelligence, and so then you start to think about these years where Epstein is very like off the map. Like we don't really know what he was doing, and that's
Mm,
like 1980 to 1988. Like there's not a lot about him that we can look up, to find out where he was or what he was doing, but we know that he was going to the Middle East. We know that he was going to Europe, and
oh,
there was things
gross.
happening in that period of time. And then all of a sudden, he comes back ultra wealthy and ultra powerful.
Wow.
And so something was going on during that time.
Yeah, and with what's his connection to Steve Bannon too? Because Steve Bannon is in there, which is
Steve Bannon,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, Steve Bannon was pissed that he got fired from the White House, and that relationship is interesting because it's different than nearly every other relationship except for his relationship with Michael Wolff. Those two relationships are very
yeah,
parallel. Steve Bannon wanted to get back to the White House, and he had heard the rumors about Epstein being involved in intelligence, and Steve Bannon always wanted to work for the CIA. So he started becoming friends with Epstein, and they really, you could see in the emails, you can see who has the powerful upper hand in the conversations. When Epstein has the powerful upper hand in any conversation, he's very clipped, right? His responses are short, 2 3 words,
yes,
non-emotional. But then all of a sudden you start to see a shift where he really starts to bond with Bannon, and their conversations get longer and more flowery and like detailed. And then you start to see Bannon having more power than Epstein because Epstein became more isolated during that time. He knew he was under surveillance, and Bannon was like expanding his career and traveling all over the world and doing
ugh,
political things. And so Epstein starts like telling him, "Oh, you're going to go see this person. Make sure you say this." And Bannon was working on, as was Michael Wolff, was working on rehabilitating Epstein's reputation, right, as a philanthropic
yes,
person, not a
disgusting.
child sex offender.
Uh huh.
And both of those men worked very hard to rehabilitate him and make sure he was. Did I break up?
No, no, you're
No.
good. You're
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So both of those men were fighting very hard to bring him back into the fold as this major player, and I'm sure they saw things in it for them. But I mean, Bannon was talking to him all day, every day. In that last year, they were just talking, 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 talking to the point that they were talking on the airplane, over email or whatever, as he's flying into Teterboro, as he's getting arrested. Like they were making plans, and then all of a sudden, Epstein's like, "Everything's off. I'm getting arrested by," and Bannon's like, "What?" And then that's the end of the email thread, right? They were very close, like extremely close. And to Bannon's credit, he's released a lot more of his interviews with Epstein
Credit.
because they
Okay.
both.
Okay.
I mean,
Because
not much
well,
credit.
you're very generous because I think it's disgusting. Well, no, yeah. I mean,
He's right.
you're a nice
Right.
person, and
No,
uh,
both
yeah,
Michael Wolff and Steve
yeah.
Bannon interviewed him ad nauseum, and you will find a lot more of Bannon's interviews with him in the files than you will
Ah.
find any of Michael
Yeah,
Wolff's.
that's what
And
I wonder
you
about
know,
Michael Wolf, though. Like, why is he still like what's his connection? Because I keep seeing him on
he
these
was very close.
podcasts. Yeah, I mean,
Isn't
come
that
on.
interesting? He's
Yeah.
still like, I have the dish, and it's like, no, he was incredibly close with Epstein, and you read a lot of like, he felt kind of like the kingpin in journalism, excuse me, where he knew a story was coming out about Epstein that might hurt his reputation, and he's like, "You want me to go crush that story for you? I'll go discredit
Wow.
the journalist." Like he was doing a lot of that.
Oh,
He was
damn.
getting people's like he got James Patterson. He was trying to get James Patterson's manuscript about the Epstein book ahead of time, and he was signing
Wow.
an NDA, and then he was forwarding all the information to Epstein, going like, "Here, I got it." He was doing really, really
Yeah,
shady,
that's
shady
scummy.
things.
what a scummy
Yeah,
scumbag.
yeah,
Like
he was not
Bannon.
in it
Yeah.
for the good.
Right, but I mean
Yeah.
that's why I'm a little bit confused. I see him on like I think it's the Daily Beast podcast he's on. These are like liberal
Hmm.
podcasts. What the fuck is he doing on there?
I know.
And
No, I don't know.
yeah.
And he
And
still has $800,000 that he raised in his GoFundMe for his lawsuit against Melania that has yet to come to fruition. There is no lawsuit.
yeah, I mean
So,
this is what well this is, birds of a feather, right?
mhm,
Cuz
right,
it doesn't matter
right.
where you say you fall on the political spectrum, and if you're palling around with a pedo,
Yeah,
um,
no, they lots of them. They joked about it. They were having dinner with Woody Allen. They would call it pedo parties, and like they ha ha ha, and like
ugh,
we're by the skin of our teeth, we're missing Me Too, and whatever. Like they thought it was all funny, all three of them. So
right,
yeah,
because
best pals.
we're not. That's the thing, we're not people to them. It's the
Yeah,
Epstein class, and then the rest of us who are here to be exploited by them
right,
in
right.
some form, and those girls, and that's why there's no doubt in my mind. Of course, if Trump is presented with a 13-year-old girl, he's not going
Right.
for it. He's not partaking in it because that's who he
Yeah.
is. He's a disgusting waste of life, and
Right.
legally and peacefully. And he should, I mean, there's no redeeming quality. That's why they don't understand too about. So we have Michael Wolf on the left. Why is he still being platformed? And Steve Bannon on the right, who, like you're saying, was interested not in the victims, of course, but in
Mhm.
rehabbing Jeffrey Epstein's image. I'm here to make you into the philanthropist and
Right.
not and make everybody forget that you're a pedo. That's what he
Right.
was doing. His publicity for him. So there's no bottom to this cesspool. It seems. What do
No,
you
there's
think
not. There's not.
about? I mean, okay, there's so many questions I have. Like, for example, because I haven't read all the Epstein files. I've read your
Mhm.
work on it. Thank you for what you do. It's got
Mhm.
to be hard to just live in that world. And,
Yeah.
but so think about like Pam Bondi. She sees this shit unredacted. How
Yeah.
does a woman,
I don't even
right?
think. I bet you she's not even reading it. I bet you
Yeah.
she doesn't even know what's in there. She's got her handlers who are telling her, and then she's got Trump's people who are saying, shut it down. But I bet you she doesn't. I bet you she doesn't care
Mm,
enough to look, you know. And like was it
right.
Robert Garcia was they had a hearing, was it today or yesterday, and they told her, are you willing to comply with the subpoena, and can you give us a firm yes that you're
Yes.
willing to answer questions? She refused to do it. Like she's refusing. She's going to do the
Right.
same thing she did last time and just get really mad and start
Uh
talking
huh.
about like the stock market being at 50,000, which it's not.
The
Um,
Dow, the
she's
Dow.
Yeah, so she's probably doing a lot of prep about that, but I don't think she's read much of the Epstein files. I don't think she's
Yeah,
spent any looking at them. She just lets people who are paid much less than her do that work.
right. And they were using it's. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but of course they were using some kind of um, search engine prompts because they were redacting some, and we know what they were searching. They were searching for Donald
Yeah.
Trump, because
Mm.
they were redacting like DON, and like don't would
Yeah.
be redacted, and
Right.
so
Right. They just like select all beep.
right,
I know.
right.
Like, and they
So
weren't
yeah,
even I don't know how you redact, like, because there's a certain way to redact. You have to open up a PDF. There's a redaction tool, and once you do it, you can't undo it. It can't be removed. And so it asks you like 12 times, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Um, but then once that happens, you can't like paste it and print it and turn it into a Word doc or do anything else. You can't ever unredact that piece. And so you can't,
hmm
there's no way to do that en masse with an entire pile of documents. You literally have to open them up and do it. So it's a lot of work. And so there was very poor redactions. There's some that are just like a line through somebody's name, but you can just see the person's name
Oh,
behind the
wow.
line. Like, well, I don't really know what your plan was here, but most people are just surprised because they go through and they realize that the redactions have nothing to do with survivors. Like not
Right.
like 99% of the redactions are email addresses, are dates and times because they don't want people to link up
Oh,
things that
wow.
happened close together. They are definitely all the perpetrators are all
Wow.
redacted out. But when you have any kind of a document about a survivor, it's fairly apparent who they're talking about almost every single time. They either miss one of the times they name her,
Wow.
or they will describe in detail things that are very specific to that person around
Right.
the
So
redaction
you
so that
know.
we know exactly who they're talking. Yeah, so we
Hmm.
know. So like their time was not spent going like, "Oh, we're protecting survivors." They could care less about that. Like they only want to protect the people who are going to come back and sue them
Hmm.
and make class
Scums.
action, whatever. So, yeah, that's all they're doing.
And that's, I just have to ask, are there any mistakes when it comes to the perpetrators like that, where they accidentally unmask a
Yeah.
perp instead of a
Well, I mean, they
survivor?
left they left the picture they left the picture of Donald Trump sitting in the drawer with all the women in the bikinis. Like,
Oh, okay.
right? They miss stuff because they can't. They don't have the manpower to get it all. They by no
Yeah,
means have enough people work. What they give them 48 hours to redact the files with 1,000 people, and you think about how many people out here actually like looking through the files who are citizens. It's millions, and
yeah,
we have a lot more boots on the
that's
ground,
true.
and probably a lot more qualifications. Like people have very unique qualifications to look for things. I've worked with people who are like font experts and know how to
Yeah.
like discover what's behind a redaction based on font size
Oh, wow.
and just really really interesting different things. And so they can't possibly have that many resources at their behest in the United States government. They just don't have it. And so inevitably we're finding more out here than they are in there.
But does it, of course, it seems clear that they're interested in redacting the names of the perpetrators, which was
Right.
against what the Epstein Transparency Act said, that they shouldn't redact the perps. Am I wrong or right
Right.
about that? Yeah.
But they did. They only
Yeah.
did. Like that
Yeah.
is who is redacted throughout. I mean, you will not see you will not see Steve Bannon's name in any email addresses anywhere. The only reason that people knew it was Steve Bannon talking was context of the conversations, and then you
Wow.
start to realize, you'll see him say Steve in the email, but you'll never see his email address.
Uh-huh.
So we don't know what his email address is, but we have all his thousands and thousands of emails.
Wow. And so as far as, so let's go back to the woman who talked about Trump assaulting her at the
Mhm.
age of 13. There were 5 interviews with her. When did they
I think
stop?
we have four.
Oh,
I don't
4?
know if there's a fifth. We're
Oh,
still
okay.
missing 37 pages, so there could be another interview
Oh, okay. I
potentially.
wasn't sure if it was 4 or
Yeah.
5. So, and to what end? So they were interviewing her in the first maladministration when Trump was the, and
Hmm.
I mean, it was still Trump's Justice Department, but even though the Justice, and let's not forget, Pam Bondi is supposed to be the Attorney General for the United States, not for Donald Trump. Like this
Hmm.
whole thing is like
Right.
is
She's his
upside
defense
down.
attorney.
Yeah, yeah. It's supposed to be that she's supposed to be protecting the American people, the Constitution, against the
Hmm.
abuses of the executive and anyone else. But
Right.
that's what I think is being lost in all of the in a lot of the conversation, especially the corporate media. They just blow over it that the
Hmm.
attorney general is now the attorney general for the president, and that's
Hmm.
disgusting. So the whole thing there, but I wonder. So they went and they interviewed her numerous times, but to what end? Like, what happened to what's the resolution here? Nothing, right? Like, it just went
No.
nowhere, right?
No. She's not. I mean, she's her job is to shut everything down. Like she's not even distracting because I mean, unless you want to call like talking about the stock market distracting, which is silly, but um, she's just there to shut it down or say nothing.
Right. But I
and
mean
and
the woman who charged or
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, no,
Okay.
it's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what about her?
Yes.
Like, what's the goal here with her? I mean, well, like, well, maybe I'm not framing it correctly. Like,
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
back when they were interviewing her in the first maladministration, it just went nowhere, right? Like, it just stopped. What was the
Yeah, and
resolution?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. We don't know the resolution, and then my
yeah,
guess is some of that is going to be in those documents. She had full legal representation. I mean, people took her seriously. Oh, well, we do know some of the resolution is she sued the Epstein estate, and the
okay.
Epstein estate paid her. They paid her from
Oh,
the victim
okay.
compensation fund.
Yeah,
And so that is another form of validation, is they ended up
yeah.
paying her as a victim um, a certain amount of money, and so that validates her story even further that
Right.
she's telling the truth. Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah,
No, no, no. I mean, they wouldn't have paid her otherwise, and that's why I just
right.
wonder, because now her story's coming out again, and
Mhm.
we don't know who she is, right? So, or has
I
she
mean,
come forward? I guess some people know, right?
no, no, she's still a Jane Doe. I mean, if you dig hard, you can find her, but like she doesn't, she wants to be a
Right.
Jane Doe, and that's her right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wonder, like, what do you think? Will we ever get these Epstein monsters off our backs or out of our halls of power? I mean, it's just disgusting.
Here's what I say. I say, remember the 3rd of November. We have midterms coming.
Oh,
And I
I
think
know.
if we get these right, then we should probably see a little bit more efficiency in the files and what happens as a result of them, I
Right.
would guess.
That's what I'm hoping. Well, that's why, and Trump, Trader Trump, he's mad, trying to get this
Yeah.
voter
I'm gonna
suppression
fix my
bill
cord
passed.
while
You
you're
got it.
talking.
You got it. And trying to get this Save Act passed because he
Yeah.
knows it's his last hope to save his own ass and the Republican Party. But
Right.
the whole thing is just it's so vile that any of these people, what I get from it, and I've mentioned it before, is that they're completely unfit. These are just
Right.
little man babies. One of the things that struck me too was all of these big, powerful, manly men of masculinity asking
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Epstein for dating advice, right? Like he was some kind of, right?
Yes. Correct. You have
you know,
Larry Summers, who is president of. Sorry, I'm going to probably switch over to using my cell phone because my computer is not charging, so you
uh-oh.
may see me twice here.
Oh, okay. Here we
So you
go.
might have to accept
I
I
gotcha.
show up twice.
Okay, so I'll have to
Right.
switch your camera. Hold on a
Apologize.
second. No, no, you're good. Wait, you
Here,
went away. You went away.
hold on, I'm here. I'm here. Just
Uh-oh, we got two. Okay, Ellie.
one sec.
One second.
Okay.
Wait, hold on a second. You got to call in again. Hold on. I don't see any. Oh, there you go. I see you now. I see you now. I
Technology.
see you. I see you. Let me see. Now I got to switch the camera over here. Here we go. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
I can move this
Sorry
up.
about that.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. I think is it, I can hang up on this one. There we go.
Yeah, you can hang up on the first one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
All
didn't want
right.
to cancel
No,
early
you're,
because
no, you're
my
fine. You're
computer's.
fine. Thank you
Man,
for
it like
doing that.
smells
What
bad even.
happened?
Something's
Uh-oh.
weird going on.
Something smells? What,
Yeah,
that
like my
mean,
cord.
yeah, you
Like,
might have a short there if that's,
that scares me. I need to order a new
yeah,
power
that
cord.
is
Okay.
not good. If you're smelling something coming from your power cord, you probably got a short in it. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need that. Yikes.
you
It was like
gotta,
crackling.
oh yeah,
Ugh.
no, that's not good. That's like you can get a fire or something. That's
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna turn that off. Anyway,
totally.
hi.
Hi. So, what was I saying? Yeah, about the manly man of masculinity asking Jeffrey
Yeah.
Epstein for dating advice. It's so pathetic. It's so fucking
It is
pathetic.
pathetic and it's like so weird because it's like I always say it sounds so Dear Diary because you have all these like men of power who you think of as like world leaders and like big, strong,
Yes.
powerful men. And they're like, do you think she likes me? Do you think she's
Uh-huh.
gonna call me back? Which flight attendant should I have over tonight? And like it's like they're like little kids in middle school, like discussing the girl that likes them. And it's so ridiculous. Like you couldn't write this. Nobody would believe it if you wrote this as a
Right.
movie. Like it's so ridiculous and so immature, and it's all these
That's what
men
it
who
is.
have,
Yeah.
relate long-term relationships at home, and they nobody seems to it's gross, but we already knew that, I guess.
Yeah, but that's what struck me too, is just how these are old men who they never grow up. That's what it seems to me,
Hmm.
because this, they're like, one of them, who was it? Was it Larry Summers that was trying to make a move on his mentee or one of his,
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
she
like
called, but it was just,
I don't know what do you think she meant when she said this? It wasn't what she said, it was the way she said it. Like,
and he's
God, grow up.
obsessing. Right. It's like these are the kinds of conversations I had when I was in high school, you know?
Right, right. And she's probably not thinking that. She's probably just like going on
Exactly.
with her afternoon. And this is like the president of Harvard. Like, you guys, like, how are we deciding people are qualified for anything? It's so ridiculous. I can't handle it, but and I'm trying to not like let it frame my thinking about like
mm,
humanity in general, because I know we're talking to a very specific group of people, but it's just like, who out there is this immature and wealthy and like,
yeah.
abusive? I watch these Gulf Streams fly over my house every day to the airport, and it's like,
Oh,
how many of these
jeez.
like wealthy individuals still think that they are all powerful and ridiculous and are still doing this? I don't know.
Right. And they don't, there's no any kind of self assessment. That's what I'm trying,
No,
they don't look at themselves. They think that this is where they should be, at the top of the heap.
right,
And
right. Well,
yeah.
and it's this idea too of, like people talk about like, how can you go to the island and abuse a little girl from Brazil or a little girl from
Mm-hmm.
Slovakia and
Yep.
then go home and like read to your kids and put your kids to bed, and like how can you do that? And it's this idea of money like changing our DNA. Honestly, I don't know. I
Yeah.
It'd be a great psychological experiment, but like to where we don't see humans below a certain poverty level as humans. We
That's it.
see them as objects or as a means to an end. Like I was telling yesterday, we had this big long like marathon live all day, but I was talking with Senator John Tester and Marita Giorgio, who
Nice.
are from my neck of the woods. And I said, we also have to remember, it's really important that we're talking about all this, but we also have to remember we're talking about this because it has to do with wealth and it has to do with whiteness. Like,
Right.
we probably wouldn't be talking about this if this case was surrounding the missing and murdered, Indigenous Women's Project.
Yeah.
Like, this would not be all over the news. This would not be up in the White House. Like, we wouldn't be discussing this. It's like the Gabby Petito case. Like we paid
Uh-huh.
attention to that for a reason, and we should pay attention to it. But there is a
Right.
reason why we pay more attention to it, and that's something to consider. That these things are happening all over the place, but there are large swaths of the population that nobody hears about their stories, and nobody is fighting for them, and nobody is paying attention to their court cases, and recognizing why we are where we are. And these
Mm.
women should all get this kind of attention. I don't discredit any woman who is a part of this case. They should have this much attention, but recognizing societally why they have it,
Yeah.
and where we should also be focused and where we should also be putting like our might and our elbow grease into. And that when this case is over, there are many, many other cases that we could help with and pay attention to.
Exactly. And it also, but it's so disheartening that it takes so many women in general to get
Hmm.
attention, right? What it
Yeah,
should have been, it should have stopped at one, but we have how
yeah,
many of the survivors out
right.
there now?
It should have stopped I mean,
At none, right?
before, but it
Mm-hmm.
should have stopped in 2008. He had
Yeah.
36 underage victims came forward in his case in 2008 that were all credible, and that's why he was arrested. 36 is a lot, and
Yeah.
he didn't get any kind of a jail sentence. I mean, his jail sentence was like a pittance. That should have absolutely, I mean, the people involved in that case should go to jail because of their negligence, many other children were abused, like
Right.
for years.
Is that the one with Jim Acosta or who?
No, Alex Acosta. I always
Alec,
hear that too, and
Alec.
I'm like, sorry,
Yeah,
Jim.
who's Jim? Oh yeah, Jim's the good guy,
No,
right?
he's a good guy. He's on Substack. No, Alex Acosta. He was the prosecutor. They had 50 indictments against Jeffrey Epstein, and they ended up with
Yeah.
only two. And he was allowed out of jail every day for 12 hours a day to go to his office. And he, in that time, was abusing girls with an ankle bracelet on, like
Oh,
with a
Jesus
like an ankle
Christ.
monitor. So like because of their negligence and their, it wouldn't even be throwing the book at someone. If you have 36 accusers who are
Yeah.
all underage, victims, like that's the quintessential child abuse case that you give them the full extent of the law. Like there shouldn't be a question there. But again, money and power and, people of
Right.
import. He knew law
And
enforcement, he knew people in charge, and here we are.
exactly. And Alex Acosta.
I know, I'm sure he gets
I
that all the
know.
time.
I'm sure, right? But Alex Acosta was thanked for his service by what was he nominated to be?
Oh yeah, he worked for the Trump administration
Right.
afterwards, and like
This is
he's
what
had
happens.
a lot of yeah, there are a lot of people that should be held accountable to, I mean, not only being active participants in this case and friends with Jeffrey Epstein and, you know, talking about canceling people, like all the people who continued to go to dinner parties and promote him after he got out of jail for abusing children, but people who enabled him to continue abusing, even if they were
Right.
not abusers themselves, they enabled him and they gave him the platform to continue abusing hundreds and hundreds of girls.
Right.
Those people should be held accountable.
Like, well, look at the former Prince Andrew, just thinking about him
Yeah.
contacting, and then even when he gave that interview with Emily Maitlis, right? And and him saying that he doesn't regret his association with him because he had this amazing ability of bringing such wonderful people together.
Yeah, did he? Yeah, we see those emails, Andrew. I know what
Yeah.
people you were being brought.
Right. And what's that picture of Andrew with who's like
Virginia.
yeah, what do we know about? Not just Virginia, but the
So,
one where he's on top of
oh,
some
like on top
girl.
of, right,
The
right. Well,
new
you have to
one.
think about the girl's face is redacted. Why is the girl's face redacted? Because she's an underage
Right.
child,
What
right?
are you doing?
So
Right? Yeah.
so you can't be like, oh, he's in there and it could just be anybody. No, they redacted for a reason. She's a child. He was everywhere. I mean, he's emailing Ghislaine Maxwell, who was one of his best friends from
Oh,
childhood.
yep.
And they were discussing, talking about like, are you going sightseeing or like bird watching or something? He goes, I prefer the two-legged type, and like,
Oh, you
and he's like, thank
scumbag.
you, the girl, like they were like planning this trip to Peru. That's how I knew who he was from his pseudonyms. Is I started to read, like he said, I don't know if it's his valet. I say it like
Yeah,
Downton Abbey, but like
yeah.
his valet had died. And then he was going to Peru in like 2002, and I was like, okay, Google, who went to Peru in 2002? Their valet died on this date, and I was like, oh, it's Prince Andrew. So Mr. Invisible, who is the pseudonym for these emails, is Prince Andrew. So now I can go
Wow.
look under Mr. Invisible and find all his emails. And there's so much planning when he goes somewhere of girls being there when he gets there. So
Wow.
like,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
so all these wonderful people who Epstein is bringing into his circle are a specific type of wonderful person, and that is very much what was
Yeah.
important to him.
And yeah, they want to get together and
Yeah,
abuse girls. And
yeah,
and there's one of the emails I read. I'm sure you read it, where he's like, "I can't wait to get together and play," or something like that. How he puts it,
yeah,
play to play.
yeah. No, well, and
We know what they're
yeah,
talking about. They're not going,
yeah,
"Oh,
and
let's
it's
get a Starbucks or something," you know.
right, right. And I've analyzed. I'm not a big like royal watcher. I'm not one.
Yeah.
I just am not. That's not my thing. I think it's a little silly, but I've paid attention to different people in the royal family as pertains to this story, and Fergie was not as innocent as I thought she may be.
Ah.
I always lean into the idea that, despite anyone's roles, they kind of come after women first. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you see people go to jail, it'll always be the women in jail first, which is a thing.
Yes.
But she
Yes.
really wasn't as innocent as I thought she might be in all of this. She was very close with Jeffrey Epstein. She had a thing for Jeffrey Epstein. Like she
Oh
was
wow.
very attracted to him and she would always
Ugh.
call him like her pretend husband, and like she really wanted Ghislaine Maxwell's job. She wanted to work in his
Yeah.
house and be
Oh
like his
wow.
scheduler when she was bankrupt, and she was very dramatic and weepy in all of her emails, and he needed to fix her problems and loan her money. And but she knew about his history. Again, she laughed about it, and then she brought her children around. So it's like
Yes.
I hold her accountable. I don't hold Diana accountable because Diana didn't bring her children anywhere, didn't have
Right.
anything to do with these people, like stayed as far away. I hear
Wow.
some like conspiracies about Diana involved. I'm just like, look, I'm not beholden to Diana, but like Diana is one of
Yeah.
those people like Melinda Gates who recognized and kept her children away and did not go anywhere near this man, right? She
Wow.
was described, she was brought up, and again, she also died pretty early on, but like she did not come around him. She sniffed him out and knew what he was up to and didn't hang around. And so, good on her for
Yes.
recognizing safety for her children. But that wasn't everybody, right? I question why they're so willing to sacrifice
Right.
Andrew when that's not what the royal family does. I question if there's not more to that story, but
Yeah.
so
Huh.
far, yeah, he was
Do
pretty wrapped up in it.
Do you think that the queen knew that her son was a pedo or
I
abusing
don't
children?
I don't know. I mean, she's not
How
mentioned a
could you
lot.
know, right? How? Yeah, I guess they could.
Well, that, and I just think, the idea of a mother to like the extent, like the ends of
Yeah.
the earth when your child is like burning down a building, you'll just be like, I will protect you. So I
Yeah.
don't know what she knew. Like I would think like, my children was abusing kids, I would have to take them to the police and be like, you have to do the right thing and turn
Yeah.
yourself in. The royal family is very different. They have a lot of like rules about that kind of thing as far as like
Yeah.
not talking about controversy. But I'm sure he was probably a hard child for her. I'm
Oh
sure she
yeah.
knew that he was complicated and she wasn't thrilled with his choices. And I'm sure while his dad was alive, his dad was probably not
Yeah.
very thrilled with his choices.
Wow.
But I don't know. I don't know. She was quote
Yeah.
unquote, running a country. So I don't know how much she knew about his like personal life and
Right.
friends and all that.
I just wonder too because he was such an asshole to everyone. Apparently that he.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard,
Yeah.
yeah. Like he
Just
didn't
a
talk to staff.
Yeah, he was just a dick to people and would just
Yeah,
curse them out and call them names all the time, just be
yeah,
abusive, outright
yeah,
abuse. And that just goes
yeah.
to show you who these people are. Who does that? That's how you know who people are. You know how they treat
Hmm.
someone who's, let's say, on a lower status. But this piece of shit thought he was, untouchable. So it's nice to
Right.
see somebody getting what they deserve. But and I wonder, as we wrap up here, we only have 2 minutes. So what do you think? Do you think we're going to have to wait for? Of course, we're going to have to wait for the Democrats. But do you think there will be
Right.
accountability if we get the
Um, I
Democratic majority?
I'm hopeful that there will be some accountability. It's going to be tough to have like ultimate accountability because this is if we fully investigate this case, it will probably be the biggest criminal case in US history.
Yes.
Like
Wow.
I don't know if they have the resources to fully investigate and but I mean, you think of like a Nuremberg trials. I know it's cliche to say, but like it would be on that level. It
It
would be a
has to.
massive takedown of all the biggest names in industry. I mean, there's very few people who are not on that list
Wow.
who were above a certain pay grade and above a certain age. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes age saved people because they just weren't around yet. But I hope that at least there will be accountability in the major players, and I hope that the survivors of it will get actual compensation. I know that they were, there's a lot of like, oh, they were compensated and they settled, and it's like it's not enough to pay for their like lawyers, their legal fees. Like they don't get a lot of money. Even if they got $1 million, their legal fees cost more than $1 million. Like when you see them on the steps of the Capitol, they're paying their own way. They're paying for their
Yes,
hotels and their
right.
plane tickets. Like they're not like rich because they're
Mm-hmm.
survivors. Like they don't have a lot to live on. Like even Virginia Giuffre, like
Yeah.
she settled and she was still working a 9 to 5 job. Like
Mm.
they were not living at the Ritz. And so I hope that the women, because there's still so much money in Epstein's estate. There's offshore money in
Oh,
something called the
wow.
Southern Trust. There's so much hidden money in like Ghislaine Maxwell's estate. There's millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that are named different things so that they cannot be touched by this victim compensation fund. And I hope they suss out the entire thing and they give all the money to the women and then they throw, the top 20 of these guys in jail.
Yeah, at
And
least the
that's what I
top
hope.
20.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Where can people
Yes.
find you, Ellie?
Yes.
Before,
I
because we
am
got
on
to wrap up.
Substack. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm on Substack as the Panicked Writer. I am now on YouTube as the Panicked Writer. I
Yes.
have a YouTube page. I'm stepping up in the world, and then I'm everywhere else. I just read Pencil Script, which is my little side hustle transcription
Oh, okay.
business.
I will put all those links in the description for everyone.
Thank you. Of
And I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And there's so much more.
course. Good
Unfortunately,
to
we
see
have.
your face.
Yes, you too. So let's talk and
Yeah.
let's get together and get some coffee and,
Get some coffee.
make some madness. And
Yeah.
I really do appreciate everything you're doing. You're really on the
Thank
front lines
you.
of this fight. So be careful, really. Be
I will.
careful. Be safe. And thank you for everything that you're doing, Ellie.
All right. Have a happy Thursday.
Yes, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
See you soon. All right, everybody. Ellie Leonard, the amazing Ellie Leonard. I'm so happy to know her. I don't even know what to say. She's great, as you could tell, as you can see. She just is living these Epstein files and doing a lot of amazing work. And uh, I'm very worried about her too. I have to say, because she's getting noticed, and that's with good reason because her work is that important. But and she is one of our national treasures, I think. So thank you so much, Ellie, for your generous time and everything that you do, to make this world better, because that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do ultimately. That's why I do my show. That's why Ellie does her work, trying to make this world better, because I think we deserve it as human beings. We share this blip of time together. And I do think that we have an obligation to make the world a little better than we found it and help each other. We don't leave anybody behind. And if there's people in the Epstein class that are standing in our way, those people need to face accountability and be replaced by those who are worthy of us. Let me know what you think. All right, guys, listen, we will get together tomorrow night for our Friday night 8:30 p.m. gathering at the Tarabuster YouTube page and the Political Voices Substack. And remember, in the meantime, stay safe, stay awesome. We will win. Thank you, Charlie from APS Radio News. Charlie is a great supporter of this show. APS Radio you go to APS Radio, download the little app, listen to classic rock and oldies all day. That's something that Charlie is doing to share, himself with us. He likes to listen to classic rock and oldies, and there's a classical music station. And so, yeah, we support each other here. And I thank you, Charlie, because he also supports the community cats. And it really does mean a lot to me as a person. So, all right, we are on the right side of history. We are on the right side of decency, dignity, democracy, humanity. Remember that. We are the real patriots. We stick together. We win. My name is Tara Devlin. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'll see you tomorrow night.